Committee's back in session. I believe we were trying to close out the mayor's.
Mr. Chair, if I may, on the prior year obligations, I did speak to Executive Director Angel Sablan, and he said, though he doesn't know the exact figure based on all the invoices that are out there, that are still out there, he said that he was going to get a list right after lunch today, so
Okay.
I'm still waiting for that. But he said there is a number of invoices that are still out.
Okay. The speaker's not here on hers, so let's just, can we go back to agriculture so that the director can go? Because he's been called down. We're going back to try to remove the bookmark. Page 61,
Mr. Chair.
Oversight Chair Senator Spicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing us to go 28 pages back to have me clarify some issues that were raised and good concerns raised by Senator Barnes relative to some of the ongoing issues at the Department of Agriculture. As we know, the battle over invasive species has been a paramount problem and a top priority as well. And relative to the entomologist, we know that Dr. Campbell, earlier in the year, he retired and he was desiring to come back on a contract, but then he recently made the decision that he would just come back as a full-time employee. So that makes things less complicated for the administration of trying to bring him back. And I was told by the director and the AO that they're really close to bringing Dr. Campbell back. And the good news is the entomologist who was once the incumbent who retired is willing to come back, and so that critical position is going to be filled. With respect to the conservation officers and the forestry aides, and on a bill by Senator Rodriguez to require that these LTAs be taken care of to make sure that there's continuity in services and to make sure that their work continues. As we know, there was a lot of administrative back and forth between DOA and BBMR and the Department of Agriculture. It's tried its best to follow the letter of the law. And finally, Mr. Chair and colleagues, as of 3 weeks ago, all of these 11 positions, the conservation officers and the forestry aides, have all been secured, and that they've are all now in the classified service of the government of Guam pursuant to that statute. So that matter's been resolved. With respect to the biosecurity fund, about this time last year, they were projecting to receive about $39,000, and so we authorized them to use whatever monies is available to hire a program coordinator. It's actually a PC4. Today, they have in their account $400,000+, and so they're moving forward to hire the other positions relative to the staffing pattern that we adopted. And so I'm hoping that these questions that were asked and the information I'm providing, together with the availability of the Director Sablan and his staff to answer any additional questions, I'm hoping that this gives the body some comfort to remove the bookmark and adopt the provisions as you've set forth with the Department of Agriculture. Thanking you for your continued support for this department.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Any other senator wish to speak on that? Does that satisfy everybody's issues?
Yes, it does,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
So, agriculture's. And they can all go back. I know. 80. 69. Page 69. Everyone, Senator Munya Barnes has distributed an amendment on Historic Preservation Resource Division. Senator, you're recognized.
Sitos Masi, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment. I first want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to bookmark this and come back to it. I do have an amendment proffered, and if I can go ahead and read it at this time. To amend Section 1T5 of Chapter 5 to read Section 5, Guam Historic Resources Division, the sum of $305,958 shall be allocated from the General Fund Appropriation in subsection T1 to DPR for the Guam Historic Resources Division of DPR. Funds allocated in this subsection T1 shall be expended exclusively for historic preservation projects, positions and projects as advised by the classified Guam State Historic Preservation Officer and approved by the DPR Director.
Any objection? Senator Adda.
I don't have any objection. I'm just curious about the specificness that we talk about the classified Guam State Historic Preservation Office. Is there an unclassified one?
No. We discovered that you can remove the classified.
Okay.
All right, so as advised by the Guam Historic Preservation Officer and approved by the Director.
So is he moving to delete the classified?
Yes.
No objection on the motion.
Okay. So on the Munya amendment with everything in there, with the amendments, no problem? That closes that department for us? Okay. Can somebody get the speaker, please? She has amendments on. I believe we left open the mayor's office. Okay. But she's not here. So I'll just wait then. Let's go to public accountability. Trying to herd cats. Chapter 9, Public Accountability Standards and Practice. Did she send me? Chapter 9, Public Accountability, Appropriation, $1,396,898. Anyone? Or page on page 93. Page 94, Chapter 9, Part 2, Guam Board of Accountancy. None? Section 1 first. Any objection? Section 2, Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for our information, on this particular appropriation to the University of Guam Endowment Foundation, Inc., may I ask, what is, how much was appropriated in 2016 for the visiting accounting professor? And
They
lecturer program?
established a seat with a $1 million endowment. And every year they have excess funds. They very graciously contributed to the University of Guam to continue to bring in off-island professors in accounting to augment the education of the accountants within the department.
Do we know how much was expended last year for this, or this fiscal year for that program?
It is an ongoing thing. It's a seat. It's a chair that they keep putting money into it.
So it's almost like a professorial chair,
Yes,
and then that money would be used to invite
Correct.
Some distinguished professors to come out.
and it's named after Mr. Phillips and Senator Durkee.
Okay, and so we're taking money from the accountancy fund.
Yes, this board receives money when they do the CPA exam.
Okay,
A lot of Asians come down to take the exam here,
okay.
so they can get their CPA certification. And when there was an excess a couple of years ago, Senator Ben and the accountancy board established a chair in the name of Professor Phillips and Senator Durkee. And every time there's excess money in this account, they give it to the university to continue to make sure that outstanding professors in accounting are invited out to teach the students here at different times during the year.
I guess the only thing that I need to understand, Mr. Chair, is if that money goes into a certain fund, that fund is under the purview of the legislature to appropriate from? Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay.
When people take the exam and it goes to the Board of Accountancy,
Right.
yes, we have control over that money.
Okay, I was just trying to understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Chapter 9, Section 2, the additional $100,000 going to the University Endowment Foundation for the Phillips Durkee Chair. Okay. Madam Speaker, I understand you have several bookmarks that we can try to address.
Okay, so which one do you want to start with?
Whichever one you have ready. Do you want to start with the
Yeah, we
Commission on
can-
Decolonization?
Okay. Oh, no, that one's still, I'm waiting for that.
That's still
final
waiting?
amendment.
Okay, fine. Whatever one you're ready with.
Okay. Why don't we just go ahead and do what we have right now, where we left off with,
The
mayor's.
last was in the mayor's.
You're right. And so, anyway, so let me start all over. This amendment that I'm proposing has been a practice of the legislature for the last 8 years. There's something that I had incorporated into the budget and had spoken to all the mayors. They visited all the mayors and asked them, because they've been saying that they have been assisting the schools, going above and beyond, what schools have wanted and expected of their principals, and that that we might as well just give it to them. So what we did is we took the figures that the Department of Education had asked the private sector to go out and assess the schools, measure the schools, and determine what the cost would be for them to maintain the school grounds. So as a result of it, then the breakdown that we have here is the breakdown that was actually provided by the Department of Education about 8 years ago. 2 years prior to that, JFK was also a part of our public school system. It wasn't yet turned over to CAPFA, who currently holds the lease of the school. And at that time then, for 2 years, the department had continued to take care of the work that the mayor has. And then ever since the transfer now of ownership to CAPFA, it is by virtue of them being the leaseholder that this is their responsibility. The other 4 schools, lease schools, they take care of all maintenance, of the grounds maintenance. And if you look on line 17, line 21, 22, and 27, those are all addressed by the owners. And I have to admit that it was an oversight on my part, not catching, of course, that we continued to provide these additional funding for JFK when this should have been the responsibility of the owners. Now, there's going to be, I'm sure, testimony or statements being made about that, this money, of course, is going to be needed for there or elsewhere. But I'll tell you this, is that in speaking with the mayors consecutively, with the exception, of course, of, yes, wanting more money because fuel cost is going up, one particular school who had an equal size for maintenance, and that's where then the change has been made. The amendment was made to bring up that dollar amount from $4,000, which is CL Titano, to $9,000, equivalent to Agana Heights Elementary School. Now, according to the mayor of Tamuning, has that responsibility for JFK, is that even just last year, as a matter of fact, for a whole year, in spite of what their arrangements were, is that they really, actually, the owners have actually been taking care of the school. However, they would continue to ask for additional things to be done, like water blasting to come and trim the trees, and the mayor said they're always going above and beyond in helping out. The mayor purchased equipment, as most mayors did. I think almost all of them did at the very beginning, knowing that if they purchased equipment at the very beginning of this budget, not this particular year, but the first time they got it, which is like 8 years or 6 years in JFK's case, is that they'll purchase the equipment. Hence, then the following years, they'll be able to save more money and be able to get either additional people to do the work, because then they would have already purchased and expended a large portion of that money by buying the equipment. And that's exactly what the mayor did in Tamuning. She bought the equipment, and it is CAPFA who's using the equipment right now that was purchased by the mayor, and the concern was, of course, is maintenance of those equipment or lost, and who's going to pay for it, and that still falls under her inventory of equipment. But she has said basically that they have been doing the work, and they've demonstrated that even for the past year and a half. Now, if there is a contract, then I need to let everybody know is that contract only takes effect at the beginning of the fiscal year. And therefore, I've asked that if they would need for them to go and speak then to CAPFA about this, about living up to their responsibility of doing the work as the owner of this school, relieving, of course, the mayor from having to do that. Hence, of course, now then the deletion in the amendment of JFK, increasing the amount for CL-Taitano, and I know you said, and later where there is a placeholder, is to use the balance to be able to put the money into the Guam Educators Certification Council. So that's my amendment.
Thank you. Senator Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the break that we had just now, I actually had communicated with the Department of Education, and they gave me, in part, a copy of the contract with CAFCA, the contractor. And it specifically states here that the maintenance contractor shall not be obligated to provide routine maintenance, security services, custodial services, waste collection, or landscaping services to the site. So if they are actually providing assistance to the mayor, it's just that. It's out of the goodness of their heart. But let's also keep in mind that JFK has sports fields, and those sports fields are not included. The maintenance of those sports fields are not included in the contract. The sports fields have grass, and they need to be maintained. So in speaking with DOE in combination with the mayor of Tamuning she actually had called me expressing concern about the $21,000 from JFK being deleted in light of the work that they actually do. I really have to oppose the amendment at this point in light of the information that had been provided to me in writing and the information provided by Mayor Luis Rivera over lunch, where she really said, you know what, it is not just about just even the front part of JFK, but it includes the sports field, and they have a wide range. She also had noted to me that they also have, she has 3 other schools there, which is Chief Brody. She also has Tamuning Elementary that has a field in the back, as well as LBJ. And so she had requested that money be kept for JFK in light of the contract that they have and the work that they have ongoing for the school.
Okay. Any other senator wish to be heard on the WAMPAT amendment? Senator Tony Atta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if we can get that information that the previous speaker was talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll take a short recess. I believe copies have been provided to all the senators. Madam Speaker, on your amendment? Okay. Senator Tonietta, do you have any questions as a result of having been provided with a copy of the...
None at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm reading over the contract that was provided to us from the previous speaker. So I have no questions at this time.
Senator Tom.
Well, I just also, in reading this documents that was provided, it's very clear that landscaping and lawns, the contractor only provides the equipment. Operation will be by others, which I guess in this case would be the mayor's office.
Yes.
No, the mayor said she bought all the equipment.
She bought equipment for the rest of the schools, not for this school.
Mr. Chair, if I may, with that information, even if the information that was just relayed to us was that the mayor of Tamuning did buy the equipment for JFK. However, that's not the issue in this. The issue right now is whether we take I believe the 21,000 that is at least right now supposed to go to JFK and reduce that amount, whether or not there's equipment or not. And so the question becomes on this particular amendment, what do we do? Because in this amendment, not only basically there was a strikeout of the funds for JFK and then appropriating a certain amount. I believe it was about $5,000 to CL Titan Elementary School, which brings that amount to JFK. And so the question, I guess, in my mind is that should we, in light of this new information, that the leaseholder of JFK does not provide the grounds maintenance, whether the mayor's office does need full 21,000 to be able to maintain all of JFK.
And I believe the information provided is that it will be necessary. So...
Okay, look. I understand where everyone's coming from, and I understand as well in terms of what this is stated. What we need to do here as well is that every year when they go out to negotiate this, when it says maintenance contractor shall not be obligated to provide routine maintenance. Just think about every one of these. Routine maintenance, security services, custodial services, waste collection, or landscaping services to the site. So every year this legislature, aside from appropriating money for our bond obligations for the building, we now they have required that the government takes care of all this. And whoever negotiated this, I want you to know, was not the legislature.
Thank you.
It was not the legislature who negotiated this. They need to go back to DOE where this originated from. And therefore, so because now that all of the equipment had been purchased already for JFK, I will amend my amendment then that it will be, instead of deleting the JFK, that $5,000 of that then be reduced to go to CL Titan, and the remaining will stay with JFK. The 16,000.
So you're withdrawing your amendment from before, and now on line 14, you're reducing this by 5,000, and the 5,000 will go to CL Titan.
So the amount will be $16,838.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I think we've made it clear, and through the information provided to me by the mayor, that she needs the $21,000 allocated to JFK and had been provided to JFK over the past. I just I oppose said amendment.
All right. The amendment is to reduce JFK by 5 and increase CL by 5. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your right hand. Amendment passes. Do you have your prior year? Senator, on the microphone, please. So we've been able... Go ahead.
We're back on the prior year obligations, right, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay. I did get a message from the executive director, Mr. Chair, if I may read this into the record.
Please.
He texted to me. He says, as of this time right now, we don't have any present outstanding prior year obligations. We only asked for the authorization because after October 5th, all invoices not paid become a prior year. We just want to be able to clear the invoices that may have been used up to September 30th. And he thanked us for our assistance. So I hope that answers Senator Espaldon's inquiry.
It does. To a large extent, it does. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have a mountain of prior years that we would have to obligate ourselves. But just to reiterate, according to the executive director of the Mayor's Council, they have no prior years as of today. And so I'm reading that as between now and to the end of the fiscal year, whatever bills may be run up then would constitute the prior years that we're giving authorization for. My only concern, of course, is that between now and then, if any of the mayors should lose, that they start running up a bill that maybe they shouldn't have run up, then all of a sudden we're paying for something that's unforeseen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think we covered that in a special piece of legislation that doesn't allow them to expend the funds. So.
It doesn't allow them to hire.
Yes.
Yes, but to expend fund, that's a different thing.
Okay,
Thank
so
you, Mr.
no
Chair.
objection to the amendment on the prior years. Thank you. So we've now closed the mayor's section. Madam Speaker, okay. Were there any other, there were some other bookmarks that I kind of would like to take care of with information on what are the bookmarks?
May I ask for 1 minute recess so I may approach you? 30 seconds.
Chapter 10, Guam Visitors Bureau. Oversight Chair Munya Barnes.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if I may, I do have 3 amendments for this chapter, and hoping you can work with me here. I have passed out 2 amendments. One, changing the projected amounts for the Tourist Attraction Fund. One, giving the breakdown of the fund, and then also one for reporting requirements. And if I may, if I can just read my thoughts or share my thoughts on both amendments so that our colleagues can have a clarity on why we're increasing the amount for the tourist
You have
attraction.
proposed 3 amendments, and
Yes.
you're going to talk about 2.
2.
Which 2?
The proposed tourist
On
attraction
section
fund
1.
amount from 40,000 to 41,502 plus, and the breakdown for the summary of the appropriations. 40,334,983 to 41,502,445, and then the summary of that appropriation, of those appropriations, and then on the last part on the service and reporting requirements, and we can take that on section 27 if you want it that way. Can I, please?
So you're proposing first, the first amendment,
Would be to
you're
increase.
asking us to go back to page 5 to revenue, section 1, correct?
Yes, but I would like at least to give the justification on why and what I've been working closely with GVB on the numbers, if I can.
Okay.
Sidzo Esmasi. Mr. Chair, we are requesting for an increase of the tourist attraction fund from 40,334,983, 40 million. What am I saying? 40,334,983. Sorry. To 41,502,455 as recommended by the Guam Visitors Bureau. After conversing with the general manager of GVB, they submitted a letter informing us of their projection to increase the visitor arrivals by 3%, generating the 41.5 million in the TAF collection. Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker, I want to share with you that...
Just a point of inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Can I inquire as to when that written communication was forwarded to the chair of TAF?
Just now. I mean,
Can we
earlier
get
today.
copies? Can we request copies of that, please, Mr. Chairman?
I have it right here. It was...
We'll take a short recess. are back on. Senator Barnes.
Mr. Chair, I just want to note to you and to the rest of my colleagues that this has been a banner year for our tourist arrivals. We know that 41.5 million is a modest goal for GVB to achieve, but we need to provide the Guam Visitors Bureau with an appropriate budget to bring in more visitors and increase our occupancy, hotel occupancy tax. This 1,167,472 will be earmarked for GVB's budget to make up the difference between the substituted version's budget and the fiscal year 2016 budget. The increase will bring GVB's budget back up to where it was in fiscal year 2016 with a slight increase, which I believe is less than, if not, or just at 1%. GVB's budget will be 22,367,472 as shown in the amended budget breakdown. And in fiscal year 2016's GVB budget, it was at 22,279,191. On this year's fiscal year 17 budget, it shows at 21,200,000. I believe that the 179,191 was not accounted for in this budget proposal that is submitted before us. And if we were to compare the two, I would think that despite us having a banner here, Mr. Chair, that it looks like that I've admitted to the GVB getting a cut. I do want to say that over the years, since we have had the helm, we've worked with many of the government agencies, including DPW, the Guam Police Department, other law enforcement, DPW, GPA, as well as Department of Parks and Recs and the mayors to address critical needs in these areas as it affects our visitors and, of course, our locals. And, the Tourist Attraction Fund, GVB, us have always stepped up to the plate and committed the Bureau to assist whenever was needed. And we can say that when we hosted the Festival of Pacific Arts and the need was there, that we did step up to the plate to make sure that we didn't affect any of the critical agencies that were needed to be utilized to help make these games a success. And as in everything that went through, you know that the event was truly a success. I do want to say that the work that has been done has been seen throughout our island, and it has impacted jobs, our economy, and our quality of life. And I want to commend GVB for their hard work so far, and that the work that they will continue to do in 2017. I also want to say, Mr. Chair, in the efforts of helping the budget and making sure that we look at all the critical needs that the government needs to support and the need of what other agencies have to do in their mission mandate to make sure that our island and our community is safe and that our destination is clean for our visitors. I want to say that it was unfortunate that based on our conversations, because we had to make some priority commitments to some projects that we've done in the past that we need to be able to move forward, like the museum, is we didn't even fund the capital improvement projects that are still going on. And I just want to say that this budget is needed. I've worked closely with GVB. I know that I continue to work with your office, Mr. Chair, to make sure that we at least sustain GVB from where they were last year. Again, based on the commitment and the latest information that the TAF and GVB has provided, they will be able to anticipate the 41,502,455. And I just want to say, Mr. Chair, that as I work these amendments, I understand what it takes. And I've been open, as you know, in the past, in these past couple of years, we have been really able to look at what has been happening with our island as an island nation, as a country, to support tourism-related activities, to support overtime for our law enforcement officers, to support the Guam Museum, as you know, and as I believe, we spent over $26 million from the TAF to be able to build something so that the visitors can truly identify with and look and know who we are as island people, and that commitment to making sure that the Guam Museum is supported. We knew that we had to make some major changes in this budget, and I was willing to work with that. So, Mr. Chair, in all fairness, I haven't stopped looking at all the concerns that my colleague has asked us based on that. We know that the TAF, based on all the special funds that are out there, has been the one that has been providing a lot of the resources to all the other mandates. We do know that when the Tourism Attraction Fund was created, it was created to make sure that we promote, advocate, perpetuate our island culture, our island history, our island heritage, just all of who we are as island people. And I want to say that even with all of that we've taken the time to work as a body to make sure that we still give to those vital, critical agencies and the needs to what the government needs to support. So I'm asking, Mr. Chair, if I may, if I can please implore to my colleagues to work with me on this budget, to work with me to giving GVB back the resources, at least keep them to the level that they've had in 2016. And then know that if the projections are higher than what is projected, then we come back to this body and work closely with the critical needs of our island. So, Mr. Chair, those are the two amendments right now that I'm proffering, and I'm hoping that I could get a favorable support from my colleagues on this measure. It is really that important. The majority of our economy depends on what we do. Tourists, our economic driver, 60% of that is tourism. More than 20,000 jobs. It translates to everything that we do here. And I'm really hoping that my colleagues can help me. I'm imploring them. Sainamasi.
Thank you. So your two amendments would increase the appropriation on page 95, but would require us going back to page 5 to amend page 5. Is that correct?
Sir, I think that would also be included, if I may, at this time, a technical amendment to go back and make that change accordingly. And then I know the numbers will change, right? So, again, when I was working with the numbers and making sure this is what we've been able to work with.
Okay. On the amendment by Senator Barnes, Senator Uggan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, my comments, please, I certainly hope no one takes it personally, because we understand the nature of the budget process. First of all, I want to start off by really commending and congratulating GVB for the ongoing efforts that they have done with our number one bread and butter, tourism industry. They've done an outstanding job, Mr. Chairman, and that goes without question. And also statements were made with regards to how the Tourist Attraction Fund has been utilized for other requirements. We have appropriations here for beach cleaning. We have appropriations here for monitoring the water quality here on island. We have an appropriation here for Parks and Rec, all originating from the Tourist Attraction Fund. We have $500,000 that goes to the Tumon precinct to be able to fund 3 or 4 uniformed police officers. So I certainly hope, Mr. Chairman, that no one takes my comments personally, but you know what's interesting is a little earlier we were talking about any possible excess revenues that would be realized from the Tourist Attraction Fund, and that taking those resources was appropriate to finance the Tumon precinct. You know, we lose sight of how sensitive the tourism industry is. But if our men and women in uniform at the Tumon Police Precinct were not doing their job, then certainly we can put that into question. But they have done an outstanding job, and all we offer them out of the Tourist Attraction Fund, Mr. Chairman, is a measly $500,000. $500,000 for the operation of the Tumon Precinct, of which cost the people of Guam and this community $3.8 million to operate that facility. So at the very least, if we believe that public safety is critical to our island residents, critical to Tumon, critical to our tourism industry, then we should be investing more for our uniformed police men and women who provide direct safety services to our tourist district. And I say this because, Mr. Chairman, by virtue of supporting the Tumon precinct, it allows the chief of police and allows the chief executive to reallocate the remaining balance of any appropriation given to GPD so that they can procure vehicles, so that they can procure equipment, they can procure weapons, they can procure supplies, and so they can also assure our entire island community that public safety continues to be a priority. All I ask for, Mr. Speaker, is any excess up to $2 million to be allocated for the operations of the Tumon precinct, which is in the heart of our tourist district. Our men and women go up and down, traverse that Tumon district, providing public safety services, and all we can say to them is, thank you, you're getting $500,000 from the Tourist Attraction Fund. And then we come to this notion, Mr. Speaker, that guess what? The revenue now is going to increase by $1.167 million. Just by virtue of looking at the numbers. By a simple letter from the general manager of GVB. Okay, so $1.167 million, of which the amendment, Mr. Speaker, rather than allocating some of these resources to our public safety Tumon precinct to reinforce the operations there, $400,000 would go to general administration within the Guam Visitors Bureau. What is the definition of general administration? If they've done a fantastic job over the course of the past year, then they don't necessarily need additional resources under general administration. We're allocating under marketing $615,472 additional dollars. We can say, yes, they need to invest more in some of our primary destinations. I understand that, Mr. Speaker. But I also believe that investing in public safety in the heart of Tumon is also a direct benefit to our tourism industry and to our island residents. And then we go on down the line, research, an additional $152,000 for research. What additional research do they need to provide? Mr. Speaker, they've had $448,000 allocated towards research for fiscal year 16. So that's a total of $1.167 million that could otherwise, some of which, if I had my way, the total amount should be allocated to our Guam Police Department so that we can show our men and women, not only in Tumon, but also island-wide, that your tourism industry is going to reinforce public safety so that the additional resources can go elsewhere in Guam. That's what I'm sitting here for, Mr. Speaker. I'm advocating for a budget that right now, considering everything, is going to be operating into fiscal year 17 with a negative $200,000 operational requirement. So, Mr. Speaker, if we want to look at this letter, and I really want to thank the General Manager of GVB, because he's anticipating anywhere from $40.2 to $40.6 million for this fiscal year. The initial adopted revenue for Tourist Attraction Fund under fiscal year 16 was in the amount of $38.6 million, Mr. Speaker, of which, to reinforce and to provide support to the safety, security, and transportation for our FESPAC guests, an additional $1.3 million in anticipated excess revenues were taken from the Tourist Attraction Fund to fund that. So, Mr. Speaker, if in fact GVB anticipates $40.6 million out of the adopted revenue base of $38.6 million, less than 1.3 additional that was allocated for FESPAC requirements, then, Mr. Speaker, there's an additional anticipated $676,000 from the Tourist Attraction Fund for this fiscal year alone, based on the letter from the General Manager of GVB. So if you believe that, in fact, this money is going to come in, then take these additional revenues and allocate some of the anticipated revenues to where it is really needed by our men and women in uniform of the Guam Police Department, the Tumon District. So I'm asking for, Mr. Speaker, because you and I know, and I did not want to touch your revenue projection, but you and I know that the Guam Police Department is in need of additional resources to be able to adequately provide services to our community. And you know, Mr. Speaker, again, all because of a simple letter, we're going to adjust the revenue base by 3 percentage points and generate an additional $1.167 million to go to administration, to go to marketing, to go to research. What about public safety? $500,000 is what a few of us would even consider allocated to the Guam Police Department in our Tumon precinct. We only gave $500,000 a few years back, Mr. Speaker, and that's a carryover amount because that's all TAF could afford. But now that we're seeing additional revenues, would it not only be proper to reinforce the funding requirement, the resource requirement, the people requirement, the uniformed police officers, men and women in the Tumon precinct, so that any and all additional conservative funding allocation to Guam Police Department can be used to ensure the rest of our community also receives the best public safety services that they can provide. I'm going to close with this, Mr. Speaker, because I certainly would prefer that, in fact, this $1.167 million go to the Guam Police Department Tumon precinct. So I'm going to support and endorse the adjustment of the revenue upwards. But, Mr. Speaker, if you're taking this in its totality, then I'm going to put forward a motion that the additional $1.167 million be allocated to the Tumon Police Precinct to fund the operations of that particular entity. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I saw several hands go up. Senator McCready, Senator Adams, Senator Rodriguez.
How do you want to approach the amendment? I was
I
motioning.
have two motions on the floor.
She was,
You would have to approve.
she wanted to explain what she was going to be doing, and
If you want to bifurcate the motion, Mr. Speaker, I alluded to my statement, but I'm moving that the allocation of the $1.167 million go to provide funding for the Guam Police Department at the Tumon precinct. And this would be in addition to what already is allocated out of the Tourist Attraction Fund. That's my amendment, Mr. Speaker.
let me take a short recess. After some consideration, the chair has decided to bifurcate. I would, however, caution the body that the TAF projection that is currently in the bill is $900,000 more than what the governor had sent us. And this proposal is going to This proposal will increase it, the governor's proposal, by $2 million. We can adopt anything we want, but I'm just saying, the committee's original recommendation, the governor was 39.39. The Office of Finance and Budget and the committee raised it to 40.3. And this one's taking us to 41.5. And we bifurcated it, and so I just want to caution everybody that that's a considerable jump. That's a $2 million jump, okay? But it's on the floor. Senator McCready, and then Senator Ada, then Senator Rodriguez, and Senator Espaldon. Okay. Senator Ada?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go ahead and take in good faith that, in fact, their projections for FY16 is tracking to end up with 1,509,784 visitors for FY2016. And then in the paragraph, they indicated that they anticipate a conservative growth at 3%, which will then bring them to 1,539,980 visitors. And I was taking a look at that number, and if you're expecting a growth of 3% from the FY 2016 target, my number comes out to 1,555,077 visitors. And that's important because that's a difference of about 15,000 visitors. And if the number, as far as how much money, I guess, taxes we get, revenues we get from each visitor, that comes out to about, the difference in that 15,000 is about $400,000, and that's what the gentleman from Jonia was, harping about, is that, we, in the first place, about GPD coming out $500,000 less, and then in as much as I want to, take in good faith the numbers that are provided here, I really don't know the basis for why they think there's going to be a 3% growth, but even the numbers there don't add up. So, so if we're going to go with a growth rate of 3% from a target of 1,510,000 visitors, then let's grow it by 3%, like they're saying, and let's use the right numbers. That simple math tells you. Now, I don't know what the details are of all of a sudden this revelation that, several weeks from the budget hearings, now something has come up that the revenue projection is going to be a lot greater than what was originally projected. So kind of leaves me a little, uneasy in as much as I want to, take it in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Rodriguez, can you find? Senator Rodriguez and Senator Espaldon are next on the. Senator Rodriguez, Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was looking at these numbers, and I'm surprised that these numbers didn't come up earlier. But as you stated, and we've kind of been following what the governor's proposal was, which was about roughly $1 million short of what we really, of what we're projecting in our budget. And now to increase that budget, I think would definitely, well, it doesn't suit me well, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. One is that, you know, we claim that for this current fiscal year, 1.5 million visitors, and then they're saying there's going to be, they're anticipating a 3% growth. However, we need to consider that during this past fiscal years, we had several major events that were one-time events. One, of course, was FastPack. How many thousands of visitors came in just specifically for that event? Of course, there was also the PATA meeting. And how many visitors came in specifically for that event? Those events are not going to be repeated in the next year. So to anticipate growth on top of those numbers, if we take away the numbers that came in for those two events alone, our visitor arrival for 2016 would not have been this high. So to project a 3% on top of that, right, to say, well, we're going to get 3% on top of that, I'm not sure we can justify it. And so I would rather, my take on it, again, trying to be conservative, and we've been conservative throughout since the very beginning, and a lot of credit goes to you and your committee. I would like to stay the course. And if in the event that we do reach these numbers down the road in fiscal 17, we have the opportunity to come back and do a supplemental budget. But for us to break open the budget right now and say, yes, go ahead and appropriate all this, knowing full well that some of the arrivals from this fiscal 16 came in because of certain events, a one-time event, I think would definitely put us in a different situation. And so, Mr. Chairman, I cannot support this projection at this time just because I don't necessarily see the need to until the point that we do reach these numbers and we can actually go into a supplemental budget. And then we can also address the Oversight Chairman for Public Safety's concern about how much the TAF will be contributing to the police force. But right now, I think we're on a good course, we're on a good track, and I would have to definitely base, I won't say an objection, but I probably will not support the amendment to increase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I also want to stay the course, and for me, that course is to continue to support what GVB needs. Staying the course means continue to rally around our oversight chair, who has been letting us know what GVB needs in terms of its budget and whatever funding it needs in order to market Guam, in order to do things like, you know, the way I look at it is the Tourist Attraction Fund, the more successful GVB's marketing efforts are, the more money that's generated into the TAF, because that as a direct result of tourists coming to Guam and spending here on the island, then we take all those monies that are generated and it becomes revenue by way of general fund revenue. Over the years, we've seen that a lot of appropriations were made from the TAF, and we call it pass-throughs, and GVB over the years have been very supportive of these pass-through appropriations. GVB has always told this legislature that this is what it needs, and anything excess of collections in excess of projections, that they were okay with funding things like the Parks and Recreation, that they were okay with funding things like beach cleanup and beach monitoring and other functions of this government, recognizing that GVB is not the sole entity that's responsible for making Guam a very safe destination. It was okay for them to allocate the $500,000 for the Guam Police Department and the $600,000 for the security camera system. So if you look at GVB's track record over the years with respect to clean audits and how they've grown as an agency, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, they've been able to grow as an agency because this legislature has not really questioned what their needs are. They do the revenue projections. we, of course, have some kind of independent review of those revenue projections to make sure that it's realistic. And in the last several fiscal years, we've saw that their revenue projections have been more than realistic to the point where they've been able to collect beyond projected revenues. And so those over collections didn't translate to GVB increasing its budget. What it translated to is it gave us an opportunity to fund programs or initiatives like FESPAC and other things that are still tourism related. So my point here is GVB is coming back to the oversight chair, to this legislature, and saying that they've reviewed the revenue projections and that they believe that it's going to grow conservatively and that they're recommending a increased level. They're also saying that with that increased level, they want to go back and restore some of the cuts that were made in the version that's presented to us. And so they're saying they need more money for marketing, they need more money for their general admin. Mr. Chair, I don't want to take a risk on not funding what GVB's needs are, because right now our tourism numbers are growing. Right now the tourism industry is strong. And it's strong because we've had a very strong partnership with the Guam Visitors Bureau to make sure that their needs are met. If we can't stop now. We absolutely can't stop now in identifying what their needs are, and if they're going to collect in excess of what their new requirements are based on the amendment that Senator Barnes is offering, then that's when we as a body can look to fund the Guam Police Department or to look to fund other areas. But to suggest that we come back midstream and do a supplemental budget, you don't do that with tourism dollars. You don't develop a marketing campaign in the middle of a fiscal year. You need to come out the gate strong with a strong marketing plan to make sure that everything is ordered in the beginning of the fiscal year and not midway. So I personally have supported our oversight chair. I know you have as our vice chair, and every single member of this body or collectively we've supported the needs of GVB. Let's stay the course. Let's listen to our oversight chair. Let's recognize that GVB has been generous. I mean, the way I look at it is they've been generous and accommodating to the point where it's compromising what they need. And so all these pass-throughs have gone to a point that, I mean, at what risk, Mr. Chair and colleagues? And I say we should never, ever, even for 1 second, think about strangling the goose that lays the golden egg, and protect this goose and make sure that if the industry is comfortable with the money that they're going to get and they deem those funds excess, then they've given us latitude over the years. I've even criticized the chair of JVB from time to time, saying, well, there was really no objections with how these monies were appropriated that had been deemed excess. So I rise in support of Senator Barnes' amendment. I think we should continue to support what GVB needs, and is as you put it, if we collect more than what we say we're going to collect, then that puts us all in a good opportunity. But we can't begin to fight over money for GPD and other critical areas of this government if we don't first recognize how that money first comes to the island. And so I stand in strong support of Senator Barnes' amendment, and I want to encourage her to stay the course by telling her that I want to stay the course. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Espaldon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the previous speaker made some good points. However, I think one thing we also have to recognize, even though it is our main economic engine, tourism is a very fragile industry. If something happens in the world, for whatever reason, in the past we've seen it. We've seen SARS, which brought the numbers down of visitor arrivals. We've seen other international events that has kind of slowed tourism on this island. I would prefer that we keep the number that we have right now, because we don't know. We don't know. And again, the first to go, because this is more, because travel and vacation and more is one of those luxury items for people to come here, if an event happens for whatever reason, we will not realize this number. And like I said, that's not even taking into account the fact that a lot of the visitors that came in during fiscal 2016 were visitors that came in for specific events. That's all. Now, we have generated a lot of press. One of the reasons why we backed it fully is because we said even those marketing efforts alone, or those events, would generate all kinds of international marketing tools for our island. And I believe it will, right? So to me, it's like I believe we can stay conservative right now, because this is one of those fragile industries that one international event could definitely throw all these projections way off. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I just wanted to add that extra thought into the discussion.
Thank you. So I believe that, did you wish to add anything else? The motion on the floor is to go back and, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, as we look, and I'd like to thank the good speaker from Magana Heights for helping me share and tell the story regarding staying the course and what we do with our tourism dollars as we make them. I'm going to share with you, Mr. Chair, that in order for us to bring those visitors in order for us, for those freely independent travelers who want to find new destinations or untouched, pristine destinations, that we as a destination need to be able to market ourselves. And the Guam Visitors Bureau has been very clear. They have been transparent about the documentation they provide. They've been able to share with us the needs and have time and time again stepped up to the plate when this august body has asked for assistance to help us in the other critical matters of this government entity. And Mr. Chair, I do want to stay that course. I want to provide the resources that that the Guam Visitor Bureau needs for it to do its work, so that our visitors can continue to come in. I need you to know that if we don't, if they build it, they will come. If we don't provide, if we're not in the faces of the international markets that are out there in order to tell the Asian region and all those around the world that this is a place that you can come and visit, I'm telling you, we're not going to be seen. We're having to compete with every dollar that we have and fight really hard to saying, look at us. We want you to come. We invite you. We want you to share the warmth of paradise with you. But they need to be able to be given the resources that they need to market our island. And this August body has been doing that. And I'm just saying that based on what was provided and based on what we need to give them for this fiscal year, knowing that there has been a projection commitment, and this and the sources that we're coming in will be realized. I think we need to stay that course, and I'm just hoping that my colleagues will
I just want to also caution you that it has been bifurcated. The decision is first to increase.
Yes.
And what happens after the increase is this body's again separately. So the motion on the floor is to accept the projection that was provided in. There's been an objection. Those in favor of adopting the new revenue projection as provided by the GVB manager today of $41,502,455. All those in favor of accepting the recommendation, or I mean the projection, please indicate by raising your right hand. It passes. So on page 5, the amendment will be made that it will read 4D 1502, 435, and all requisite amendments will be made for all the additions that are necessary. As a result of that increase. Okay? Your second amendment.
Mr. Chair, my second amendment was passed out also. Again, the $1,167,472 increase will bring GVB's budget back up to where it was in fiscal year 16 with slight increases. Mr. Chair, there is an additional $88,281 from fiscal year 2016, which is really less than a 1% increase. I also want to re-note, Mr. Chair, that the budget breakdown is summarized, showed an allocation for $21,200,000, which means that the $1,079,191 was not accounted for in fiscal year 2017 when it was budgeted for last year. And I want to restate, Mr. Chair, that even if GVB had a banner year, it looks like we as an August body, as a committee, cut them, and that's not the intent. I've stated before that over the years, the Guam Visitors Bureau has worked really, really hard with other government agencies, including GPD, and other law enforcement entities, and helped the mayors to address the critical needs in the areas that affect our visitors and our local residents. And I do want to take the time to say that GVB has stepped up to the plate to support the efforts that we've introduced in the past when we saw that there was additional funding. And I want to say that as I commend GVB for their hard work, we need to continue to give them the resources that they need so that they can continue to promote who we are as an island destination. I'm going to share with you, Mr. Chair, that if we are out of sight, out of mind, if we're not there fighting for the same visitors that everybody else in the nation's fighting for, you and I know that. You and I have also went out to go look to see what kind of new additional resources that are needed so that we can be able to sustain this island's economic driver, 60% of that. And I stand before you as the oversight chair just saying, I believe in my heart that we need to give them the tools that they need. This is not asking for much more than what they've been given to last year. Mr. Chair, over the years, we can look at what we were able to do to help other agencies. As I look at the mission mandate of the legislation that created the Tourist Attraction Fund and the Guam Visitors Bureau, there were specific items of what needed to be done and how the funds could be utilized. But yes, I would say that in the past, as the oversight chair, I did look outside the box. I did step out the box to saying, okay, security will be part of that. Based on what the mission mandate is for the Tourist Attraction Fund and what it needs to do to develop, to create, to restore, to build, to work with public areas, including what we have in as far as our zoos, our museums, our athletic facilities, our cultural centers and performing arts. I have stepped out of the box to help. Our committee has worked really hard to see the concerns of what other agencies needed and to promote Guam. And we talk about having a return of investment. We give a little, we work with what they need and what they want to do, and know that the return of the investment is tenfold. So, Mr. Chair, I know that, again, I'll reiterate that we have been very blessed to see that our visitor industry and that our tourists who've come here have seen the beauty of who we are as island people. They've truly experienced the warmth of paradise. They've truly have said in surveys that they want to come back. Just recently, I met a Japanese tourist who was probably in his late 70s or 80s, and he said, I'm back. This is my third time back, but this time I'm with my grandchildren. And I'm waiting for them because this is a beautiful place to be with. Believe it or not, I apologized that it was raining, and he said, no, it's still good. I see the clear skies. Mr. Chair, if we don't give GVB the resources they need, we will not be doing our job. And let me tell you, Guam is not the only destination. We don't even have to look far, Mr. Chair. We look at our brothers and sisters of the CNMI and of Micronesia. And I'm telling you that we literally have to work, take that extra mile and work that extra hard just so that we can be able to attract those visitors who've never heard about who we are. And you yourself know that. We've gone to a conference where Guam, where's Guam? You would think that people in the United States would know where Guam is. And they don't. You and I have been trying to promote a cruise industry to bring new resources and new opportunities the same way we worked on looking and capturing the resources on the bed and breakfast. And making sure that we don't lose out on the additional millions of dollars that were lost when this industry was just new to Guam. And some would argue that the bed and breakfast concept was already over 4 decades. But yet, there were businesses popping like popcorn, making their thousands and thousands, and we couldn't even capture the business privilege taxes from that because they were illegally set up. But we took the time. We worked with the industry. We worked with GVB to capture maybe the additional $3 or $4 million that's needed. And we brought everybody to the same table. And Mr. Chair, I will commit hard that as long as I'm the oversight chair, that we will continue to bring everybody to the same table and see what we could do to advocate and bring new resources into our island. And all I'm asking is my colleagues to give me that chance to continue this hard work. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say I didn't support GPD, because I do. I understand what it needs to be able to make sure that our visitors and our residents are safe. That's why I wasn't afraid to step out of the box and think creatively based on what the mission mandate says and what is required by law, to saying let's work this, and then to continue to give the addition, to give funding from this resource to work with the law enforcement agency to give them that funding. And if we get the additional resources, we can even revisit that again. But let's first give the facilitator, the agency that needs the money, to be able to promote and advocate Guam. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Uggan and then Senator McCready. Any other senator wish to be heard on this amendment? Senator Uggan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've really pounded the issue in regards to public safety, especially with our tourists. And it's interesting that a statement was made that these people are coming back, our visitors are coming back, because they not only see the fruits of the labor of GVB and the use of the Tourist Attraction Fund, but because it's a safe, relatively safe community. And it goes without saying, Mr. Chair, GVB's got $21 million in their allocation right now. We're proposing to increase it based on the amendment by $1.1 million. Why can't we just use that same concept? If there's additional resources, then we will come in and give it to GVB. Let's give the $1.1 million where it is needed, ensuring the safety of our community, ensuring the safety of our visitors. That's all I'm asking. Let's give the Public Safety Agency, the Guam Police Department, with additional resources to be able to operate the Tumon District so that they can reallocate other resources and take care of the rest of the island community. You know, we keep advocating education, public safety, and healthcare. Education has been addressed. The oversight chairs have stated that, in fact, the funding is sufficient for the upcoming fiscal year. Healthcare, public health is sufficient. Also, we know that a lot of these agencies could use additional resources. But we also gave GMH an additional $15 million out of the loan proceeds of 45 for this upcoming fiscal year so that they can use it to pay for vendors. Now I'm asking this body to consider giving the additional identified revenues to where it's needed: public safety. The safety of our community so that our visitors can continue to come back. So I ask, Mr. Chairman, so I'd like to move to amend that the allocation of the additional 1.1 be directed to the Tumon precinct for the operation of that facility. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McCready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if we can take a quick recess, discuss this, and see if we can't come to some kind of a compromise with these numbers.
Do you have any?
Well, I guess I'll say something then. And then
the issue before us is the
amendment.
allocation of Section 1 appropriations And you
The
either
specific
for it or against it,
appropriations.
and then if it fails, then there'll be an additional $1.3
But
million.
we can also take a recess to see if they can come to a compromise with the specifics of the,
Let's just keep it all on the record if
Okay.
there's going to be any discussion.
First, Mr. Chair, I would like to say that I believe that what the previous speaker from Agana Heights said was we can't choke the goose that lays the golden egg. GVB has been doing a wonderful job, and they are the driver of our economy. 60%, we all know that. It's a billion-dollar industry. It creates jobs. It creates resources and revenues. And we know this because we tap into them when we need it. We've done that over and over and over again. We've used the TAF fund without necessarily putting it into the budget. We always come back to this body when there's appropriations needed and needed to be authorized, and we do it. We rate the TAF. We took, I think, in 10 minutes, I think we took $8 million or $9 million a couple years ago, to pay overtime, to fund some things that we deemed important. We did that. I was here. But when you look at, and so I'm 100% in support of GVB and what they have been doing and what they need to do in the future. I supported the increase in revenues that was just proffered by the chairman of GVB. But when you look at the specifics of this amendment, when you look at marketing, and I'm not a tourist marketer, but the first question I would imagine when you're marketing something would be public safety. When I go anywhere in the country, the first thing I ask is, how safe is it? Then you go to research, and the research that you do, in some part of that research, it has to say public safety. You go into outreach, public safety. Destination maintenance, public safety. That's all has to do with public safety. We have a infrastructure, a piece of infrastructure, it's dilapidated, right across the Kmart building. It's adjacent to the JFK building, or the JFK school, that could be used as a safety mechanism for the people who use that road, whether it's students, or whether it's tourists, or whether it's people from our community. That is the bottleneck that a lot of tourists get robbed, right there on that road. We have something that we can rehabilitate and make it into a Coban. So, and that's why I asked for a compromise, because you hear both our arguments and they both make sense. But at some point, you're going to have to side with public safety. If Tuman is not a safe destination, if a tourist gets robbed and their passports get stolen, which we've seen numerous times, they're not coming back. So yes, it's our driving force, doing a fantastic job, but we can't lose the sight of how important public safety is to that area. It's priceless. And I think we have to not forget that. So, and if you go down to Tuman, and I know a lot of us do, it's no longer just a tourist destination. There's a lot of people from our community that use Tuman. Go there to have dinner. You know, so I think we should never forget. I mean, if we're going to appropriate all these monies, we have to make sure that public safety is included. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Any other senator on the amendment by Senator Munya Barnes? I saw Senator Tom Matta, then Senator Vespicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that public safety is very important. I guess my viewpoint is, on the one hand, we want to pump more money into marketing so that we can go to where the points of origin of these tourists and push them over here. But then when they get over here, it seems that we're not spending enough money for destination management. And so, maybe we might get a lot more return visitors if, in fact, we improve the destination that they've come to visit. But since we're on the issue of public safety, providing more police presence down in Tumon certainly contributes to that. But then also, it seems that we're all denying the fact that we got half of our street lights down there don't work. You drive down there now, and after rain, those things have shorted out. And so we got these tourists that are walking in the dark. Even the cops that are around there can't see them. But we don't put
Chair,
we haven't put anything in there. Wait a minute, I'm talking.
Hold on a second.
And so, we talk about, we're going to put in, $600,000, $400,000 more for administration, $600,000 more for marketing so we can push them over here, another $150,000 for research. And you know how much we're putting in for destination maintenance? $1.1 million. And we had already gotten estimates from when we appropriated, generously, $900,000 earlier this year, that they needed twice that, 3 times that. So, we can put cops on every corner and all that, but I really think if tourists come over here and they don't feel safe, they're probably, and they have to go walking around holding their hands to their hip pocket, all that effort to push them over here is for naught. So I think, to the issue of putting more money into security, putting more money into I guess we got here, visitor safety and satisfaction, $950,000. I think I've said it all.
And just for everybody, throughout the budget, there are also other appropriations. The appropriation of $500,000 to GIPA, the 120, the mayors for the parks, to clean the bathrooms. It's not just specific in here, but all of those. The additional $20 million is spread out throughout this budget to take care of those other things. So I just want that clear. Senator Espicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the comments that you just made, because I was just going to remind the body that those, when you look at GVB's budget, they are taking $3.5 million to fund parks and recreation and mayor's beautification projects and some cultural activities. So as you pointed out, there's some $20 million worth of appropriations that's spread out throughout the government of Guam's to help alleviate the strain on the general fund. And when I first talked about several years ago, what else can we do to further alleviate the strain on the general fund, to recognize any amounts from the TAF that can go to fund the Tumuning precinct, that was after GVB told this body that money is excess and that we can live without those additional resources. As pointed out by our oversight chair, this additional $1 million increase is not an increase for the Guam Visitors Bureau per se, because right now with the current version they have, they are facing about $1 million cut. They're facing and if that happens, as the oversight chair said, there would be about $1.1 million less that they're going to have to make up if this amendment doesn't go through. They haven't received any increases in their administration, and so even the organic requirements of increments and COLA for their retirees, as well as upgrading their computer equipment, that's, as we understand, is antiquated. They have received about a $700,000. They would have to cut $700,000 from the current proposal. Their research, they have over $150,000 was cut, and some of this research is what involves visitor exit surveys and results from some of the things that tourists want to see, so that when they come to Guam, they would want to come back. Also, if this amendment doesn't pass, then they would have to find from within this budget where to cut those cultural grants, and so, as well as destination development. So GVB, is already indicating that if they get the current budget as proposed, they're going to have to go from within this budget that's proposed to cut $1 million. And so the move to raise it by about 1.1 million should not be seen as excess monies that are needed above what GVB is telling us they needed. And so I just want to restate my comments that, we really have to think long and hard and seriously about the consequences of the Barnes Amendment failing, and what it would mean in terms of, when we're in an active campaign, and even if we're doing well as candidates, we still pump more money into our campaigns because we want to maintain that kind of result. And with all this talk that visitors, we need to fund the Tumon precinct so visitors can feel safe, visitors already feel safe. With all the talk that we're having all these problems throughout the tourism industry with the tourists, those things are not occurring right now, Mr. Chair. They have the concierge program that's helping those visitors, and they're doing stuff above and beyond to take care of that tourist holistically. And so if more money comes in, as been demonstrated in the past, the oversight chair and all of us are sure need to look at where those excess revenues can go, but we just have to decide as a body and philosophically, is this 1.1 million deemed excess, and if so, then appropriate it out. But if we recognize as a body that the current budget they're facing already has about $1 million shortfall based on what they communicated their needs are, then this money should not be classified and categorized as excess, and that we should just support the Barnes Amendment. And I'm here this afternoon to say that I support the Barnes Amendment, and I do want to stay the course in terms of whatever it is that we need to do to help maintain GVB and its strong presence throughout Asia, to make sure that these tourists know about Guam and they continue to come to Guam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just for clarification, we are on page 95 on section 1 on the appropriations. So though Senator Uggan has made what he thinks is an amendment, first we have to vote on this, and if there's an excess of 1.5, then he can make the change. That would be $1.5 million can go someplace else. But right now, the only thing that before us is this amendment on this page, section 1, chapter 10 of this chapter. Is that clear? You're claiming that your amendment to use this money for GPD should be what's on the floor. It can't be what's on the floor. What's on the floor is this amendment, and you can say, I oppose it because I would much rather use it for GPD. And once we vote on this and we take an action on this amendment, if it fails, then there will be additional $1 million for whatever it is that you want to make.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that there was an amendment to the amendment, and the amendment to this primary amendment is to allocate the $1.167 million to the Tumon precinct for their operations. So that's the amendment to the amendment. But regardless, Mr. Chairman, I just have one inquiry. How much cash does GVB have in their reserve fund? if I can pose that question to the Oversight Chair, please, Mr. Chairman?
Do you yield?
Give me a second and I'll get the number. I don't have it right here.
If she doesn't have it, does OFB have access to that number, Mr. Chair?
Where's it? What is he looking for? What is it in the reserve?
How much in actual cash is GVB holding in its reserve accounts?
The only thing we have is what's in the audit for the end of 15, not what's current. I don't have a current number.
This is also July statement. It is actually for the unrestricted, but these are the receivables that are needed, and these are the expenditures.
Do you want to provide that to them?
So, Mr. Chairman, so the amendment to the amendment, the primary amendment was not considered because it's on the allocation of the additional amended sums. So I would think it's proper in this case as an amendment to the primary amendment. But I will respect your ruling. But, Mr. Chairman, I certainly hope that the information with regards to the question that I just posed, I was hoping that it would be readily available because it's significant. Is a significant amount that is presently being held cash in the reserve account. So I will leave it at that. So I move for the previous question, Mr. Chair. On the amendment to the proposed amendment, if in fact you're entertaining that.
I object if there's an amended motion. Mike, did you want me to answer the?
No, I'm working just with Section 1. If this fails, then you have 1 point whatever you believe it's to go to another section in the budget bill, because that's not within this page 95.
I understand, but it's the allocation of the total amount, Mr. Chairman. So that's why the amendment to the primary amendment was proffered, because it would amend where the proceeds would be allocated. But I will respect the decision of the chair, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I'm trying to address first this, and if it fails, then you have that amount to do with as this body feels. Okay? Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, Mr. Chair, I'm just sitting here listening to the whole conversation and actually arguing within myself as to whether or not I was going to speak. And I'll tell you why. You know, many years ago when I started the Guam Police Department, my first assignment was to the Tumon precinct. I served as a police officer down there. I know the struggles and I know the challenges. And I can appreciate that, you know, as a result of many of the evolution of law enforcement on Guam throughout the years, that there are synergies and there are cooperatives and there are, I guess, sharing of responsibilities amongst other law enforcement entities. That I firmly believe is made not just Tumon and Tumon, but this whole island safer. And I commend law enforcement for having to work that. That said, is reason why I struggled with this is a couple months ago I was having a conversation with a gentleman, and we were talking specifically about the GVB budget. And I valued the conversation with this gentleman on this topic because he started that bureau. And my conversation with him was the struggle as to, okay, where do we prioritize our resources? And how do we prioritize our resources? And then he told me, you know what? Tourism now today makes up the bulk of what our economy stands on. I said, put it this way. Everything that you want to do with the money, what money are you going to be able to use if they don't come? You know, and then as I was looking through this budget and I saw, you know, first off how much, you know, as far as special funds, how much they're going to be generating. They're generating. Nobody else is generating it for them. And I think that if we go through this entire budget, I don't think you're going to find one entity other than them that generates their own money from the outside. They bring the money in. Everybody else generates cash from what's on this island. Then if you look further as to how it's allocated, it's a struggle right now here, just right now, to even give them half of what they bring in for us. Because as you had stated, Mr. Chair, over $20 million goes to funding other programs. That's like letting the goose lay the eggs, and as a result of the profits made from that egg that you're going to sell, you can only buy half the feed. And expect that goose to continue to lay the egg. His final words to me on this subject was, protect that goose. Because if you don't, there's going to be no egg. Then, this whole discussion, conversation as to where that money should go to, it won't happen. Because it won't be there. And to learn that what they're asking for is just a slight increase from what they received last year. But almost every other entity in the government has received increases as a result of what they're doing. My struggle is, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what we decide on, I'd like the opportunity to go back to that gentleman to ask him whether or not he was listening to the conversation, whether or not we did the right thing or not. And I won't have that opportunity to do that. So I'm going to protect that egg. I'm going to protect that goose, so that goose can continue to lay the eggs. Because until we decide and we figure out how to create another leg for this economy, we better do the things necessary to protect its existence. So I support the Muñe amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Muñe Barnes. I'm sorry. Tell Jake I said I'm sorry.
Thank you. Anybody else on Senator Muñe Barnes's amendment?
You'll be short. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I also rise in support of the amendment, and for several reasons, and that everyone has spoken about basically is that when you really look at the increases, you're right, they're nominal. And they're really critical in three areas. The general administration, because these guys work real hard when they go out there, and I have to admit that I saw them in action for the very first time. And I used to be one of those that kind of question all the time, you know, how the monies are being spent. And to see how hard they work to not only maintain what they have, but to bring in new markets, and more importantly, the years that it has taken for them to be able to bring in even a new airlines. And just sitting down and talking to some of the people who are involved in marketing and research and see the work that they've done and the years that they've worked to bring in the market, you know, has demonstrated to me that this is, you know, the funds that they bring in really should be protected. I remember the day, of course, in 1995 when John Uggan, the former senator, used to really protect it as, like it was a sacred cow. At the same time, it was a golden egg, and we wanted to try to bring it into the South. We wanted to bring in more cultural heritage and community activities, and we've seen how it has done that. From where it used to be all in Tumon, it now has actually spread out to the community. We've also seen how in the individual appropriations, how that is really going into our community, and how everyone finally has just taken ownership of tourism that is not just in Tumon and is not just for the tourists, that is actually also for the entire community. And of course, public safety is important, education is important, health is important, and in every aspect of that, we've seen the monies go in, you know, to education, to our tourism programs. We've seen it go into our public schools, we see it go into GCC and UOG. And then when we talk about public safety, I mean, we have a visitor safety program, and it's not just TAF, but even in the private sector, those who have provided even some vehicles to be able to assist. Other companies have offered services to provide visitor safety. I mean, all those are all in place through many of the research and collaboration with the private sector, then to be able to not just provide for the visitors, but more importantly, the entire community. So with that, then, Mr. Chairman, I do support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any other senator? Espaldon?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn on this amendment, and that is, aside from the numbers that we're talking about, which basically allocates the $1.some million, there is also a strike-through on some of the verbiage above, and the strike-through concerns the rainy day, the GBBD rainy day fund. If I could just ask the author of the amendment why there was a strike-through, for what purposes, to understand this. I would have definitely appreciate it.
You yield, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair, any unexpended or unencumbered funds that was provided to GVB, it was at the request of GVB, because what they usually do is, if I'm not mistaken, it used to revert back to the fund for its operations. And what happens, if you put the money in the rainy day fund, by law, you can only use it for emergency purposes.
And I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, why that would be a bad thing.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, based on the law as provided, emergency utilization for that would be under extreme circumstances, just like the one we had a couple of years ago when there were several fatalities and maybe 13 injured tourists when there was an attack on our visiting tourists. That would be considered an emergency. And then another one is when there was a downturn in the economy from Japan. I think that was another utilization of the funds. So again, that emergency, that rainy day fund, for the point of information, Mr. Chair, that I wanted to answer is that's the only thing that's left. It's as of the July statement, I think that's at $2 million on the rainy day fund. So it's real restrictive.
Mr. Chair, it's not real restrictive. Bottom line, the rainy day fund is still available to be used by GVB in the event that, yes, there is a rainy day, that things just don't seem to pan out the way everybody had anticipated to pan out. And then we're not talking about extreme emergencies, because we've seen in this past year alone that GVB used the rainy day fund, and the chairwoman is correct, when they saw a downturn in the Japanese arrivals. And so in order to push the marketing a little bit more, they tapped into the rainy day fund. And so that wasn't, I don't know if you can call that an extreme situation, but it was the GVB still controls those funds. And I think it's just prudent to always have that little bit of a rainy day fund for us to strike it out now, right, and to eliminate that from this whole process, I think would definitely be short-sighted on our part. In other words, we're willing to go into this jar that we've been putting aside a little bit of money every year, right, just in case an emergency arises. And now for us not to do it and to actually be able to dip our hands into it, to be able to spend however we want to spend it, is not wise. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking that, I have
no objections to
I'm moving for the removal of the deletion.
Putting it back
Reinstate
in.
it.
Reinstate.
Yes, and that's my motion.
All right.
Thank you. No objections, Mr. Chair.
I don't believe that there's any objection to reinstating,
The rainy day
removing the
fund.
strike-through
Okay.
on just those 3 lines there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
On the allocation of the 1.1 million,
Can I just note again that this is not excess money, and that
no, I understand. This is a revised projection. All right. So on the allocation in section 1, as amended by the Senator Munya Barnes, the Oversight Chair, all those, is there an objection for the allocation? Oh, okay. Okay, do you want to finish? Yeah. Can we just finish this so we can do miscellaneous provisions starting tomorrow? Or, okay. Hopefully it won't be painful or long. Section 2. Section 2 on the pass-through. We're going down on the bottom of page 95, section 2. No objection? Section 3, historic and lawn. Section 4. Section 5. Section 6. Section 7. Wait. Senator Abbott? Section 7? Well, it wasn't.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some concerns with this Micronesian Cruise Association, $50,000, and I guess this association was established back in 2011. And 6 years later, quite frankly, I'm just not sure what progress are we making on this thing. I hear about annual trips to conventions in Florida, but quite frankly, I just what progress is being made?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may. First of all, we want to take the time to thank the Guam Micronesian Cruise Association for working closely with PATA International to bring a team of experts out here to explore the opportunities of how the cruise industry can be integrated into our island. And Mr. Chair, I want to share that with your support and your vision to bringing this new industry in, that they've been able to work with PATA International. The preliminary reports are in, an assessment was done. They paid MCA, paid for the accommodations for this team of experts to come in also. And I want to say that the official report was submitted to PATA Micronesia and Micronesian Cruise Association at the PATA Summit, and we have a meeting set after budget for Micronesian Cruise Association to come up with the action items as recommended by PATA International. Again, saving millions of dollars on an assessment that Micronesian Cruise Association took to putting a proposal out there, getting expert opinions from this expert group, and then giving the action items that Guam would have to do in order to home port a cruise industry here. Again, at the commitment of our brothers and sisters from Micronesia, Guam was asked to lead this efforts of seeing a cruise industry in this region, and we have continued to do so. Micronesian Cruise Association is a nonprofit organization that works closely at the hip with Guam Visitors Bureau and all our Micronesian brothers and sisters that are included in the cruise industry portion to be able to tap into that market. And again, the report has just been given to us last month, or at the summit, which was in June or May 22nd, the last part of May, and a report will be done to this August body as soon as budget session is over and I can get a public hearing date.
Thank you very much. And I just want to, on January 18, 2016, there was a story that was reported by KUAM. It was called Micronesia Association Set Sail on Big Opportunities. And here's some of the things that were said. It said, it's really not likely for any of the big four companies, whether it's Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Line, or Star, or even MSC, to homeport an asset in Micronesia. Because what's happening in the last 4 years is that we're going through an era of backfilling and consolidation in existing primary markets that are already under pressure. It was further said that faced with marginal returns in recent years, the major cruise lines have chosen to focus on the well-established destinations they are currently serving. We have no critical mass to support a sustained industry development. We have scattered and unbundled attractions. Our shore income opportunities are limited or non-existent, thereby not making us an attractive destination for operators. Now, these were statements made by the Micronesian Association, Cruise Association president. And so, and he's been at this for a while, and I guess it seems like he's finally come to this conclusion that, where the cruise endeavor here in Micronesia is a heck of a uphill battle. And so, how much more are we going to continue looking at this thing to finally conclude that it's not going to work? But every year we keep pumping in $50,000. Now, I don't know if we've been pumping in $50,000 since 2011, but I'm just getting a little weary. Boy, I sure could use a $50,000. I could think of a number of things we could use $50,000 for. So, I'm just saying I'm just not sold on this thing. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. And, many times we always say, do we believe everything, of course, that's written, in the papers? I know that we've been really involved in meeting with these individuals. And granted, large ships, will be very difficult to enter the ports of all of our Micronesian islands. Guam will be capable, but surely not, the others. The thing is that what the association has done every year with the cooperation of its members throughout Micronesia was to actually look at their area and see what needs to be done to either prepare the area to address some of the concerns about entry fees and permits and passports and things of that nature, to be able to work with areas who are sovereign nations versus Guam, who is a U.S. territory and can travel with just a U.S. passport. But what Guam did with MCAs actually brought out experts, and I say experts of over 100 years of experience to Guam, to look at Guam on the feasibility of making Guam the hub. And then the focus here really, although yes, there may be problems elsewhere, but don't forget that throughout this area is considered undiscovered, and that's what people are looking for something that's really different and unique and that they haven't been to and haven't even heard about. And then most recently with Pohnpei, now the placement of Nan Madol in terms of restoring it in the World Registry of, and it's known as probably, I don't know now whether we're up to the 8th wonders of the world, but it's definitely listed as one of them. And so therefore, with all the islands now starting to look at that and starting to prepare then for it, is waiting now for Guam to be able to start it off. When they came here, they visited naturally the Port Authority, and we were all taken aback in the beginning when they were told that they weren't going to have it at the Port Authority, and they were looking now at Hagåtña Harbor. But just most recently, the director herself of the port was looking now at, of course, the renovation and development of the port, and had listed, yes, the cruise liners to be able to enter and be there to be able then to have more cruise ships come to Guam. So there's been progress really made. I think we're really very close now. The question now only would be for individuals throughout the world to fly here to Guam, but that would be the easiest, and then get on the ship and go throughout Micronesia. And my understanding as well is that even in Asia, there's an interest, and the Philippines, to also then do the same. So it's coming.
Thank you. Anything else? On Section 7, is there... Section 8, Guam International Film Festival. Anyone? Section 9, Rainy Day Fund. Senator Tom.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the GVB Rainy Day Fund was established in FY 2009. And I guess the way it works is that should a emergency arise, then GVB on its own authority can spend up to 50% of what's in that pot. But what gets deposited into the rainy day fund is at a minimum $200,000, or I believe it was a certain percentage of whatever the projected revenue is. So I guess what we're doing here is we're putting away the minimum of $200,000. But back to this rainy day fund on the expenditure of it. So GVB can spend up to 50% on its own authority. Anything beyond that, it has to come to the legislature. And I don't recall, at least not in these past 8 years, that they've ever come down here to request to expend out of this GVB rainy day fund. So my question is, if we've been putting away $200,000 as the law requires since FY 2009, I'm just very curious, how much is in there today? And I realize that question was asked.
She announced that was 2.8. 2.032 currently.
$2.3 million $2 million is sitting in there right
Yes.
now. Interesting. Okay, thank you.
And in the Valentine-ish of 2012, it was, I think they used almost $2 million of that, of what was in there before. So this puts aside $200,000, and the portion at the beginning in Section 1 was it any unexpended that would also go in here. But in as much as we've taken it to the limit, there's probably not going to be unexpended. So for sure, we want to make sure that it gets at least $200,000 in the event something happens.
Okay, thank you.
Section 9. Section 10, Humatek. Section 11, Amat Tatatano. Section 12, Hurao. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any objection. I just want to be able to share with the body, having firsthand experience with this past summer, my son, our 10-year-old, went to the summer program at Hural, and I tell you, it is an awesome program. It gets the parents and the family involved, and so not only has he now learned the Chamorro language, even my wife and I are learning, and so we plan to put him back during the school year, and really I just want everyone to know that this is a program that we must support, and if there's ever an opportunity to increase the funding that's provided to Hural, I would definitely support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Section 12, Hural. Section 13, Inanagafpagu. Section 14, Humanities Guahan. Section 15, the Guam Symphony. Section 16, Guma, Guam Unique Mutant. Section 17, Duk Duk. Section 18, Adzuda. Section 19, Tasa.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question about this. You know, I attended the public hearings, and I understand that at one time, this was actually, we had one organization, one seafaring organization, and then now we've got two, and in fact we've actually got four. And so I asked, well, why is that? And it says, well, because as they get mature, I guess, they decide, well, I want to do it this way, and then they break off. But now we've got this, we're actually expending $25,000. And during the public hearing, I asked one organization, I think it was TASA, and they explained, you know, basically what they're doing to justify their $25,000. And basically, my take on it was that, well, we brought this guy in from one of the islands, and he's going to build a boat. And then there was the other group, Tasi, and he says, yeah, well, we have apprentices we're going to build another boat, but they also do a lot of other, they get involved in other activities to I guess, contribute to the preservation of the culture and the language. And so just wondering, do we really need two seafaring organizations? And so, gosh, I don't know how to go about this, but I would really prefer to see Section 19 rolled into Section 20, and, you know, since at least from that public hearing, it appeared that the other group, TASI, was the one that was, in addition to preserving the seafaring traditions, it was also contributing a lot and getting involved a lot in other cultural preservation activities. Huh?
Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Oversight Chair, do you wish to, please?
Mr. Chair, the good senator from Manila brings up the point regarding Tasi and Tasa. Tasi was the original founder of the seafaring nonprofit organization to help promote the education, build, and teach our generations about the seafaring vessel and the education. Out of that came TASA. In the beginning, it was a very, very strong group. There were differences of opinions, and that main one group separated into 2 groups to be able to maintain the respect for the teachings of the sinas that were in the group. So 2 sinas separated, and in the fairness of being fair to both organizations, at that time Speaker Ben Pangilinan, who was one of the founding members of the group, made it a point to divide the appropriations in half and share and give both groups the equal amount to advocate for their mission mandate. So that's why there's 2 groups now, but because of that, there's now there was conversation, Mr. Chair, on a meeting that all the seafaring organizations come together, and now there's 5, and there is one from off island, but that one from off island has come to work closely with both seafaring organizations and the private sector. There is another organization that was born out of this of Tasi, which is now called Ulitau, and they're now at the Valley of the Lati working closely with a private organization. But they, in all fairness to the organization, when it was first founded, that's how the split up became. There's Tasi and Tasa, and then the appropriations were split in half to work with both organizations and the different teachers. Tasi is local, Tasa is Micronesia.
Senator.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I was wondering all weekend, gosh, is this even worth the dogfight? But I'm going to make the motion to basically object to this appropriation, and then when we move on to Section 20, to take the $25,000 and put it into TASI, and then let TASI try to bring together these different organizations to help them achieve their goals. But TASI has been the organization that's been around since the beginning. And really, again, from the public hearing, if you're going to take a look at this, it seems, and the common thread amongst a number of these organizations is the preservation of the language and the culture. And it just appeared to me that TASI really contributed more to that, to the Chamorro culture and language. So that's my motion.
On the motion by the good mover, I hope, Mr. Chairman, that he would yield to the proposal that I'm going to proffer. I know he's moving to consolidate that $25,000 into Section 20. But, Mr. Chairman, there was a proposal that was introduced in this legislature that already had its public hearing. And it's Bill number 329-33, the Fallen Heroes Monument, that would have allocated $25,000. And I'm looking at all the special appropriations out of the TAF, and the funding source that was identified in Bill 329 was from the Tourist Attraction Fund. So, Mr. Chairman.
No objection.
With the consideration of the mover of the amendment, I'd like to please.
Mr. Chair, where are we at right now, sir?
He has an amendment, right, Mr. Chair?
No.
On Section 19?
I'm willing to withdraw my amendment, Mr. Chairman.
It's either that, Mr. Chairman, or I'm going to yield to the chairman of TAF to find the $25,000, which was a commitment, outright commitment made during the public hearing, that funding source will be identified going into fiscal year 17, so that our fallen heroes' families can finally have their monument constructed. So I'm asking for the consideration of the chair of the Tourist Attraction Fund and the consideration of the members of this body to please, let's identify that funding so that at least these families can know that it's a resource that is allocated.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to withdraw my objection and to allow the gentleman from Jonia to make his motion.
Okay, let me just, I need to take a short recess. Let's recess until 9 tomorrow morning.